On the morning of September 21st, 2023, a shooting occurred at the Toyota of Berkeley Service Center in Albany, California. The victim, 24-year-old Alonna Gallon, was shot and killed during her work shift. The shooter was identified as her child's father, also 24 years old. Surveillance footage shows the suspect entering the service center during business hours, walking directly to Gallon and opening fire at close range. Multiple employees and customers were present. Emergency services were called immediately. Gallon was declared deceased at the scene. Police arrived within minutes. The suspect remained on site and attempted suicide but failed. When approached by officers, he pointed his weapon at them. Law enforcement opened fire. He later died from gunshot wounds.
Want to die before my kids. I don't want to see none of my kids. I don't want any parent to have to ever go through this. None whatsoever.
Alonna Gallon is the mother of 24-year-old Alonna Gallon, who was shot and killed by the father of her 7-year-old son, King. According to police, the gunman entered the Toyota dealership on Thursday before noon and shot Gallon. When police arrived, they shot and killed the suspect. But Gallon says right now there's more questions than answers.
Everything was, I don't know. We don't have all the information.
Gallon said her daughter loved life, but said her priority was her son.
Her 7-year-old child doesn't have a mother or a father. And that's saddening for me. I told him that his mom and his father was gone. He just laid his head back and said, no, they not. And after that, he's been crying. We all broke out crying. He's been seeing him cry, everyone cry.
Gallon says her daughter was not in a relationship with her alleged killer at the time of the shooting, but instead that the two were co-parenting King together. Gallon says now both parents are gone, all because of a senseless act.
It's going to be hard for me, hard for my family, of course, because she was very much loved by everyone. Everyone loved my daughter. And that her son, he's going to need therapy. I'm going to need therapy.
The family has started a GoFundMe account to help with the therapy costs for King and help with the eventual cost of his college education. Bailey O'Carroll, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
There were no known restraining orders, prior domestic violence reports, or ongoing court cases between the victim and the suspect. The two shared custody of a 7-year-old child. Following the incident, the child was left without either parent. This was not a robbery. It was not random. It was classified as a domestic-related workplace homicide. This investigation will examine verified facts, timelines, and known interactions between both parties. It will also assess whether any legal or preventative actions were overlooked. But several questions remain. Was this act premeditated or spontaneous? Were there prior signs of conflict or danger? Could this incident have been prevented through legal or workplace intervention? What happens to the child now, and who is responsible for his care? Stay with us as we break down the full story. From the background of both individuals to the moments leading up to the shooting, we'll reveal what really happened and why this case matters. If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Alonna Gallon was a 24-year-old woman residing in California. At the time of her death, she was employed at the Toyota of Berkeley Service Center, located in Albany, where she worked a regular shift and was known by co-workers as reliable and consistent. Her role was not publicly detailed, but it placed her in a customer-facing position within the dealership. She was raised by her mother, Alonna Gallon. There are no public records indicating the involvement of her biological father in her upbringing. Sources identify her mother as the primary figure in her early life and adult development. Alonna did not grow up with access to wealth or privilege. Instead, her background was marked by modesty and a strong focus on self-reliance and personal development. Alonna graduated from high school and had expressed interest in furthering her education, though there is no confirmed report that she attended university or completed a college degree. However, she was actively employed and showed interest in career progression within the automotive service industry. According to statement from her family, she had long-term plans to either move into management or pursue certification in a trade-related field. She was described as goal-oriented and proactive about creating a future for herself and her son. She was the mother of a 7-year-old boy named King Walker. King was her only child. Alonna became a mother at the age of 17, which places her son's birth around 2016. The father of the child was Lamar Walker, also 24 years old at the time of the incident. Alonna and Lamar met in their late teens. Their relationship was inconsistent, with multiple breakups and reconciliations over a span of years. It was not characterized as stable by those familiar with their history. Despite the nature of their relationship, Alonna and Lamar shared joint responsibility for their son. They were not living together, and there is no indication they were romantically involved at the time of her death. They maintained a co-parenting arrangement in which King spent time with both parents. The specifics of their custody agreement, whether formalized or informal, are not available in public records. However, those close to the situation noted that while Lamar had access to his son, Alonna retained primary caregiving duties. In the months leading up to the incident, Alonna had reportedly started to distance herself from Lamar. This decision stemmed from concerns she raised about his behavior, which she described to family members as reckless and unstable. According to her mother, Alonna Gallon, Alonna wanted to create more boundaries in their co-parenting relationship. She did not publicly accuse Lamar of abuse or file a restraining order against him. At the time of her death, there were no active legal protections in place to prevent Lamar from contacting or approaching her. Despite the lack of formal legal action, Alonna was making decisions that indicated a desire to separate her life from Lamar's influence. She had informed her family of her intentions to move forward with her own goals, focus on her career, and provide a stable environment for her son. Reports suggest she had begun making plans that excluded Lamar from her future beyond shared parenting responsibilities. Alonna Gallon's life was centered on her role as a mother and her efforts to maintain stability through consistent employment. She did not have a public criminal history, and there are no indications of involvement in illegal activity. Her known associates were primarily family, co-workers, and a small circle of friends. Lamar Walker was 24 years old at the time of the shooting that occurred on September 21st, 2023, at the Toyota of Berkeley Service Center in Albany, California. He was the biological father of Alonna Gallon's only child, a 7-year-old boy named King Walker. The nature of their relationship had shifted over time. Although the two were no longer romantically involved, they continued to co-parent their son prior to the incident. Reports indicate that their dynamic had become strained in the weeks leading up to the shooting. There were no known or publicly documented criminal records for Lamar Walker prior to this event. He had not been arrested, charged, or investigated for any prior offenses at the state or federal level. His background appeared legally clean, with no prior indication of criminal activity that might have forecasted the violence that unfolded. However, behavioral concerns have been raised informally by those close to Alonna, particularly her mother. According to statements made following the incident, Alonna's mother described Walker as reckless and noted that her daughter had begun to create distance from him due to unspecified concerns about his actions and temperament. This distancing may have contributed to Walker's growing frustration and instability. Walker's employment history was inconsistent. At the time of the shooting, he was either unemployed or engaged in irregular work that lacked structure and stability. There are no known employer statements or job affiliations linked to his name in public reports. His financial status and career direction remain unclear, though his lack of steady employment may have contributed to personal stressors or emotional volatility. There is no formal mental health history available in public documents or through verified sources. Walker had not been diagnosed with mental health disorder, nor was he undergoing any documented treatment. However, the sudden nature of the attack, combined with the murder-suicide attempt and his confrontational behavior with police, has led to speculation about his mental state at the time of the incident. These concerns, while unverified, are supported by behavioral patterns observed in the final moments of his life. The events following the shooting suggest a potential state of emotional breakdown or desperation. After shooting Alonna Gallon at point-blank range inside the dealership, Walker did not attempt to flee. Instead, he remained at the scene. When police arrived shortly after 11 a.m., they encountered Walker still armed. According to body-worn camera footage and official reports, Walker attempted to shoot himself, but did not succeed in causing immediate fatal injury. Law enforcement instructed Walker to drop his weapon. However, instead of complying, he reportedly pointed a firearm in the direction of officers. This act prompted police to open fire. He was shot by officers on the scene and later pronounced dead. The confrontation ended in the span of a few minutes, leaving both the victim and the shooter deceased. Video evidence from body cameras and dealership surveillance confirmed these movements. Walker's decision to confront police while armed, after a failed suicide attempt and a public murder, demonstrates a final escalation behavior that had not been previously visible to those outside his immediate personal circle. Despite the severity of the event, there is no indication that Walker had communicated threats or warnings in the days leading up to the murder. No restraining order had been filed by Alonna, and no formal complaints or police calls involving him were recorded. This absence of legal documentation may have limited outside intervention or preventive measures. The totality of Walker's background paints a picture of a 24-year-old man who, while lacking a criminal record, displayed patterns of instability and declining personal circumstances. With no formal support systems in place, no visible mental health diagnosis, and no legal barriers between him and his ex-partner, his actions culminated in a fatal act of workplace violence that took 2 lives and left a child without both parents. This incident raises multiple questions. How do systems respond to individuals who show signs of erratic behavior but have no legal history? Should co-parenting conflicts involving concerning behavior be escalated more seriously, even without direct threats? And how can workplaces better prepare for unexpected confrontations that stem from personal domestic disputes? These questions remain relevant as investigations conclude and families search for answers in the aftermath of the Albany Toyota tragedy. Alonna Gallon and Lamar Walker met in their late teens. By the time they were 24, they shared a 7-year-old son named King. The two had experienced repeated tensions throughout their relationship, often breaking up and reconciling. Friends and family described the dynamic as unstable but not outwardly violent. There were no restraining orders filed, and no police reports of domestic violence prior to the incident. Weeks before the murder, Alonna reportedly began to set strict boundaries. According to her mother, Alonna Gallon, Alonna had recently cut off personal contact with Lamar and was limiting their communication to matters involving their son. She stopped inviting him to her home and discouraged unannounced visits. She had made it clear she did not want a romantic reunion. Lamar's behavior during this period changed. He was reportedly calling more frequently, showing up unexpectedly, and appearing agitated during drop-offs. One coworker mentioned Alonna seemed distracted in the days leading up to her death, often checking her phone and stepping outside to take brief calls. However, she never expressed fear or indicated that Lamar had threatened her directly. Text message records obtained by investigators after the incident showed Lamar had sent a series of emotionally charged texts to Alonna in the days prior. Some messages included accusations, frustration about not being allowed to see their son freely, and references to feeling disrespected. None of the messages contained direct threats of violence, which is why no legal action was taken. On September 21st, 2023, around 11:15 a.m., Lamar Walker entered the Toyota of Berkeley Service Center in Albany, California. Surveillance footage captured him walking in without hesitation. He was wearing dark clothing, and his hands were in his pockets. He was not stopped or questioned at the entrance. Footage showed Alonna standing near the service desk, reviewing a work order with a colleague. She appeared unaware of Lamar's presence until he was within a few feet of her. Witnesses say he pulled out a firearm and fired several rounds at close range. The entire sequence took fewer than 15 seconds. Lamar entered the dealership at approximately 11:15 a.m. Alonna was engaged in work-related duties at the customer service desk. She was not alone. There were at least 3 employees and 1 customer in the immediate area. Co-workers reported hearing Lamar raise his voice seconds before the shooting. He reportedly said Alonna's name and something unintelligible before pulling the weapon. Witnesses described hearing at least 5 gunshots. Alonna collapsed immediately. Panic followed, with employees running for cover and 1 customer diving behind a counter. 1 employee used a back office phone to dial 911. Forensic investigators confirmed that 5 shots were fired. Alonna was struck in the chest, neck, and shoulder. She died at the scene. No one else was physically injured. The dealership entered emergency lockdown. Employees exited through rear doors or sheltered in locked rooms. The 911 call, made at 11:16 a.m., reported an active shooter inside the building with 1 confirmed victim. Albany police arrived at 11:21 a.m. Officers surrounded the building, and body cam footage later showed their entry through the main bay door. Upon locating Lamar near the reception area, they found him sitting on the floor with a firearm in his hand. He had already shot himself in the head in an apparent suicide attempt, but was still moving. As officers gave commands, Lamar reportedly raised his weapon toward them. Multiple officers fired their weapons, striking Lamar. He was declared dead at the scene. Body cam footage confirmed that officers had given clear verbal warnings and that Lamar did not comply. Internal security cameras captured the entire incident from multiple angles. Footage showed Lamar entering, walking directly to Alonna, firing his weapon, and remaining on site until police arrived. The video was later used to confirm eyewitness statements and validate the officer-involved shooting. On September 21st, 2023, law enforcement officers responded to a shooting report at Toyota of Berkeley and Albany, California. The 911 call came shortly after 11 a.m., with a call reporting an active shooter and a victim down inside the service center. Multiple officers from the Albany Police Department arrived on the scene within minutes. They located the victim, 24-year-old Alonna Gallon, on the floor of the dealership, unresponsive. A male suspect, later identified as 24-year-old Lamar Walker, was also found on site, alive but armed. Police body camera footage released by the Albany Police Department shows officers approaching the building with weapons drawn. As officers entered the premises, they issued commands for the suspect to drop his weapon. Walker, sitting on the ground with firearm in hand, refused to comply. At one point, he raised the weapon in the direction of the officers. Police responded with immediate gunfire, striking Walker multiple times. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The footage also revealed attempts by officers to communicate and de-escalate. However, Walker's gestures, possession of firearm, and refusal to comply escalated the situation. There was a brief time window between Walker's suicide attempt and his confrontation with law enforcement. Albany Police Chief John Geisberger held a press conference later that week. He confirmed the identities of the victim and the suspect and outlined the sequence of events. According to the chief, the officers followed department protocols, and the shooting was justified based on the threat presented. He described the scene as volatile and stated that officers acted to protect themselves and anyone who might still have been in the vicinity. In line with standard use of force policy, officers are authorized to use deadly force when there is an imminent threat to their lives or the lives of others. In this case, the suspect had already committed a fatal shooting, was armed, and refused multiple commands to disarm. When the suspect raised his firearm, the officers perceived a clear and immediate danger. The department's internal review confirmed that the officers' actions were within policy and aligned with legal standards on the use of lethal force. The department emphasized transparency by releasing the footage within days and provided a timeline of the incident. They confirmed that the officers involved were placed on standard administrative leave pending the investigation. The police department also offered counseling services to all employees who responded to the traumatic event. They acknowledged the loss of life and reiterated their focus on public safety and officer accountability. The incident attracted widespread local media coverage. Community members expressed shock, but showed support for the police response. Several outlets published the surveillance and body cam footage, raising public awareness of the events. Online forums and local news comment sections debated the officers' response time and decision to use force. Some questioned whether non-lethal methods could have been used. However, law enforcement analysts widely agreed that the response followed proper protocol based on the threat level. A key issue raised after the incident was whether de-escalation was possible. Critics argued that officers could have used tasers or attempted negotiation. However, law enforcement agencies clarified that when a suspect has already shot someone, remains armed, and is non-compliant, officers are trained to neutralize the threat immediately. In this case, the opportunity for extended negotiation was limited. Walker's decision to point a firearm at the officers ultimately left no viable alternative. Since Lamar Walker was fatally shot during the police encounter, the case did not proceed to trial. There was no opportunity for formal prosecution or court proceedings. The legal process ended at the crime scene with Walker's death. The district attorney's office confirmed that no charges would be filed, as the suspect responsible for the homicide was deceased. There was no second suspect or additional party involved in the shooting. Public records revealed that no restraining order had ever been filed against Lamar Walker. According to the victim's family, Alonna had recently begun distancing herself from Walker due to concerns over his behavior. However, no formal legal measures such as restraining orders or police reports had been submitted prior to the incident. This left law enforcement with no documented history of threats or domestic violence to act upon before the shooting. Following an internal review and analysis of the crime scene, the incident was officially classified as a domestic violence-related homicide. Investigators determined that the motive was linked to Walker's emotional state and his connection to the victim, with whom he shared a 7-year-old child. The murder was labeled as an isolated act stemming from personal conflict, not a random or workplace-related attack. The case was considered open and shut. With the suspect dead, the investigation complete, and no additional suspects or legal proceedings required, the file was closed. The final report confirmed the nature of the crime, validated the police response, and documented the aftermath. No further actions were taken, and the case was archived by the Albany Police Department. King Walker is a 7-year-old son of Alonna Gallon and Lamar Walker. He was not present at the Toyota of Berkeley Service Center at the time of the incident. On the morning of September 21st, 2023, both of his parents died. His mother, Alonna Gallon, was fatally shot at her workplace by his father, Lamar Walker, who was later shot and killed by police after he pointed a gun at officers. As a result, King Walker became an orphan within the span of a single morning. Immediately following the deaths, the question of custody and guardianship arose. According to public statements made by Alonna Gallon's mother, Alonna Gallon, she has taken full responsibility for King's care. No official custody dispute has been reported. Alonna Gallon indicated that she plans to raise King with the help of her extended family. She publicly stated her commitment to providing King with a stable home and protecting him from the long-term consequences of the trauma he has now been exposed to. Mental health professionals were contacted shortly after the event. Alonna Gallon confirmed that King would be enrolled in regular therapy sessions, specifically trauma-informed counseling. The sessions will be tailored to children affected by domestic violence and parental loss. As King is at a critical developmental age, early intervention is being prioritized to prevent long-term emotional and psychological complications. These therapy services are expected to be ongoing, and a specialist will monitor his mental health progress. A GoFundMe campaign was launched to support King Walker's immediate and future needs. The fund is publicly accessible and outlines that donations will cover therapy, educational costs, living expenses, and any other necessities King may require as he transitions into life without his parents. The fundraiser quickly gained traction after being shared by local news outlets and members of the Berkeley and Albany communities. As of the latest update, the fund has received several $1,000s in donations. Organizers have committed to transparency in how the funds are used. The media response to King's situation was immediate and widespread. Several major outlets covered the story, focusing not only on the murder-suicide aspect, but also on the unique and tragic position of the child. News reports and online articles referred to King as a forgotten victim of the case, someone who did not witness the crime, but will live with its consequences permanently. Discussions on social media platforms further highlighted how children are often indirect casualties in domestic violence cases. Hashtags related to the case trended locally in the days following the incident. Professionals in child psychology have publicly weighed in on the possible long-term psychological effects King may face. These include post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, grief-induced depression, anxiety, and difficulties in forming interpersonal relationships in the future. The severity of these effects typically depends on the support system in place. Experts have emphasized that while King's age makes him more vulnerable to trauma, early intervention and consistent care can significantly improve his prognosis. The Toyota of Berkeley Service Center, where the shooting occurred, responded with an official statement within 24 hours. Management expressed shock and offered condolences to the victim's family. The facility closed temporarily following the incident, both to allow for a police investigation and to give employees time to recover from the trauma. Grief counseling and support resources were made available to all staff, and several were placed on temporary leave. The local community reacted with immediate support. Within days, a candlelight vigil was organized outside the Toyota dealership. Attendees included friends of Alonna Gallon, community leaders, and local residents. Many participants left flowers, handwritten notes, and candles at the site. In addition to the physical vigil, an online memorial page was created where people could post messages and tributes. The case sparked wider discussions about domestic violence. Advocacy groups issued statements emphasizing the need for more proactive measures when dealing with toxic co-parenting relationships. Several nonprofits used the case as a prompt to call for expanded education, intervention programs, and more support services for single parents dealing with volatile partners. The story was cited in policy debates and articles focused on intimate partner violence. Additionally, workplace safety protocols came under scrutiny. Critics questioned whether there were enough safeguards in place at public-facing job locations, such as dealerships and service centers. Policy discussions now include whether employers should receive alerts or warnings if an employee is involved in a domestic violence situation that could spill into the workplace. Suggestions included implementing panic buttons, staff training on threat response, and mandatory reporting mechanisms. The incident served as a wake-up call to both community members and institutions. While the violence was classified as an isolated domestic event, its public nature forced broader conversations on how domestic disputes, when left unchecked, can escalate to lethal outcomes in shared environments like workplaces and schools. This case remains under review in several respects, but its most enduring consequence is clear. A 7-year-old child now faces life without either parent, and a community continues to grapple with the deeper questions it raises. This case centers on the fatal shooting of 24-year-old Alonna Gallon at her workplace, Toyota of Berkeley Service Center in Albany, California, on September 21, 2023. The alleged shooter was her child's father, 24-year-old Lamar Walker, who confronted Gallon in the middle of a workday, fatally shooting her before police intervened and ultimately shot Walker during a standoff. Their 7-year-old son, King, was left orphaned by this event. Alonna Gallon was employed at the dealership and was a mother to a young son. She and Lamar Walker shared custody but were not in a relationship at the time of the shooting. Gallon had recently attempted to distance herself from Walker due to his reportedly reckless behavior. On the day of the incident, Walker entered the dealership, approached Gallon, and shot her at point-blank range. Police arrived quickly and engaged Walker after he attempted suicide and later pointed a weapon at officers. Walker was killed by police. Gallon died at the scene. A GoFundMe campaign was created to assist their son with therapy and education following the loss of both parents. Could this tragedy have been prevented? This is a critical question that remains open. There is no public record of restraining orders or formal legal interventions between the two prior to the incident. Despite reported signs of instability and reckless behavior by Walker, no law enforcement action or workplace alert seems to have been in place. This absence of formal protective measures may have left Gallon vulnerable. The question remains, could intervention by authorities or workplace safety protocols have stopped this outcome? Were their warning signs ignored? Family members reported Walker's reckless behavior and that Gallon had chosen to distance herself. However, no evidence indicates prior police involvement or documented threats escalating to this violence. This raises concerns about whether friends, family, or coworkers recognized any warning signs and what actions, if any, were taken. It also prompts reflection on how warning signs in domestic or co-parenting disputes are handled in informal contexts and whether more proactive approaches are necessary. What can others learn from this? One key takeaway is a potential gap in protective measures for individuals involved in toxic or volatile co-parenting relationships. This case illustrates the dangers when boundaries are not respected and no formal safety plan is established. Additionally, it highlights the need for increased awareness around recognizing behaviors that may escalate to violence. It also underscores the vulnerability of children caught in these situations and the long-term impact on their lives. This case serves as a stark reminder of the deadly consequences of unresolved domestic and co-parenting conflicts. It calls for increased public awareness about intimate partner violence, IPV, especially in contexts where former partners share custody. Workplaces need clear protocols to protect employees facing domestic threats, including training, reporting systems, and support services. Communities should encourage victims and witnesses to report concerning behaviors and seek help early. Policymakers may need to examine existing laws around restraining orders and co-parenting arrangements to prevent similar tragedies. Alonna Gallon was more than a victim or a headline. She was a young woman trying to maintain stability for herself and her son while balancing a challenging co-parenting relationship. Her efforts to distance herself from a volatile situation show an attempt to protect herself and her child. Remembering Alonna as a person with goals and responsibilities beyond the tragedy emphasizes the importance of addressing the root causes of such violence. Should workplaces implement more protective measures against domestic violence threats? Given that this tragedy occurred at a workplace, it raises the question, are current workplace safety policies sufficient to protect employees from external domestic threats? Should companies conduct risk assessments, provide training on recognizing domestic violence signs, or establish emergency protocols? Should restraining orders be mandatory in cases of toxic co-parenting relationships? The lack of a restraining order or formal legal protection here is notable. Would mandatory legal protections in contentious co-parenting situations help prevent escalation? What are the pros and cons of such measures in protecting victims without restricting parental rights? What signs should friends and family look for in abusive dynamics? How can people close to those involved identify early warning signs of escalating conflict or violence? Are threats, controlling behavior, or reckless action sufficient grounds for intervention? What role should friends and family play in encouraging victims to seek help? How should a child be supported after losing both parents in this way? King Walker is now a 7-year-old child who has lost both parents due to violence. What mental health, educational, and social support systems should be in place to help children navigate such trauma? How can communities and organizations ensure the child's long-term well-being? Is justice ever truly served when the killer dies before facing court? With Lamar Walker's death at the scene, no trial or legal closure is possible. Does this outcome provide justice for the victim and her family? What impact does it have on public perception of accountability in domestic violence cases? If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.
Ashley was such a lovely girl, and such a waste. Such a waste. She was so polite.
And it just hurts, you know what I mean? Of how young that girl was. She had a whole life ahead of her, and she lost it because of him.
She was 19 years old, a devout Mormon, born and raised in the quiet city of Vernon, British Columbia. Her life was structured, clean, and predictable, until she made a decision that would end it. In November 2021, Ashley Wadsworth boarded a plane to the United Kingdom. She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was going to meet the man she had loved online for years. His name was Jack Seppel. They had known each other since she was 12. He was 15. Their digital connection had grown into an obsession. She trusted him enough to cross continents. She believed she was stepping into a relationship. What she didn't know was that she was stepping into a trap. In less than 3 months, Ashley would be dead, stabbed 90 times inside a small flat in Chelmsford, Essex. Her injuries were not survivable. They were not accidental, and they were not spontaneous. What followed was a crime scene so brutal that first responders were visibly disturbed. Jack Seppel filmed a confession beside her body and sent it to his sister. Then he waited for police.
This is a recording of Jack losing his temper.
Feel my temper coming back. This thing on my neck. I'm gonna this thing on my neck. It's driving me crazy. I'm so ill. I'm gonna kill her. Murderer.
This isn't a story about love gone wrong. It's a story about manipulation, isolation, and the deadly consequences of ignoring early warning signs. Ashley's murder didn't happen in a vacuum. Jack Seppel had a documented history of violence, restraining orders, domestic complaints, threats, but no one acted. How does a young woman from a safe community end up the victim of a calculated killing 7,000 kilometers away from home? Why were the signs missed? And how many more people like Jack Seppel are walking free with no accountability? This is the case of Ashley Wadsworth, a story with clear warnings and a final outcome no one stopped. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover the truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what are your thoughts as the story unfolds. Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Ashley Wadsworth was a 19-year-old Canadian woman from Vernon, British Columbia. She was born into a conservative Christian environment, rooted in the Mormon faith. Her upbringing was structured, disciplined, and involved strong community ties through her church. Her family was close-knit, described by neighbors as supportive and present in each other's lives. Ashley was the youngest of 3 daughters and actively participated in family and church-related activities throughout her adolescence. Her personality was described by acquaintances as trusting, curious, and adventurous. She was someone who believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt. Friends noted that she was eager to explore the world and often dreamed of traveling outside of Canada. Her curiosity extended beyond her physical environment. Online connections became a gateway to new relationships and experiences that her hometown could not provide. Ashley's life began to shift course when she developed a long-distance relationship with Jack Seppel, a British male from Essex, England. Their online relationship started when Ashley was only 12 years old and Jack was 15. Despite the early age gap and the non-traditional origins of their contact, the two remained intermittently connected over the years. As Ashley grew older, the online interaction between them intensified. By the time she was 18, Jack had resumed consistent contact, and the dynamic evolved into what appeared to be an online romance. Jack encouraged her to come to England to visit and stay with him. The pressure to travel and meet in person became more persistent over time. Ashley, still driven by her adventurous nature and desire to see the world, agreed. By early 2021, Jack Seppel began encouraging Ashley to take their online relationship further. He pressured her to consider visiting him in the United Kingdom. Ashley expressed her excitement to friends and family, but also faced resistance. Her family reportedly showed concern about the nature of their long-distance interaction. They questioned the safety of traveling across the world for a man Ashley had never met in person. Despite these reservations, Ashley proceeded with her plans. In November 2021, Ashley booked her international flight and traveled from Canada to the United Kingdom. She arrived in Chelmsford, Essex, where Jack Seppel lived. From the outside, this appeared to be the beginning of a young woman pursuing international love. For Ashley, it was her first time leaving Canada, and her intention was to experience British culture while deepening her relationship with someone she believed she had known for years. Would you travel to a foreign country for someone you've only known online? Upon arriving in Chelmsford, Ashley moved into Jack's apartment. They began documenting their time together on social media. Initial posts included smiling selfies, shared meals, and outings in the town. To outsiders, the images projected a stable, happy relationship. The online presentation suggested that Ashley had found companionship abroad. However, within a few weeks, subtle warning signs began to surface. Friends and family noticed a sharp decline in Ashley's communication. Phone calls became less frequent. Texts went unanswered. Ashley's online activity dropped significantly. Her digital silence was uncharacteristic, especially for someone known to share her life openly with her sisters and friends. Reports indicate that Jack Sepple began exhibiting controlling behavior shortly after Ashley's arrival. He limited her access to outside communication and monitored her phone activity. Her personal freedom was gradually restricted. According to later testimonies, Sepple's manipulation was rooted in possessiveness and control rather than any overt form of affection. Ashley's family, still based in Canada, began voicing their concerns again. Despite brief reassurances from Ashley during short calls or messages, loved ones noticed that her tone had changed. She seemed withdrawn and guarded. Over time, Ashley's social media presence, once a tool for expressing her joy and travel experiences, became inactive. The situation escalated as Ashley's isolation deepened. Friends in Essex who had met her during her stay observed Jack's temperament and noted red flags. They suspected that Ashley was uncomfortable and possibly in distress. Her desire to explore and learn was being overshadowed by the restrictive environment she now found herself in. What are early signs that someone might be isolating you from your support system? Jack Sepple was 23 years old at the time of his arrest for the murder of Canadian teenager Ashley Wadsworth in Chelmsford, Essex, England. Prior to this incident, Sepple had established a pattern of abusive and violent behavior that had been documented but not criminally prosecuted. Despite multiple warnings and protective orders issued against him, he remained free and able to begin a new relationship with Ashley, which would ultimately end in her death. Jack Sepple had 2 previous restraining orders filed against him by ex-girlfriends. These restraining orders were issued following incidents of harassment, intimidation, and coercive behavior. Details from court records indicate that he exhibited possessive and threatening behavior, often escalating into verbal aggression and implied violence. However, none of these incidents resulted in a criminal conviction, largely due to lack of evidence or the unwillingness of victims to pursue charges beyond protective orders. A 3rd restraining order was issued by his own mother, further highlighting the extent of his behavior even within his own household. This order came after Sepple allegedly acted violently and erratically toward her, demonstrating a lack of control and a pattern of volatility. This restraining order also failed to result in any criminal action. Despite being known to police and social services, Sepple was not monitored or flagged as a high-risk individual in any known databases prior to Ashley Wadsworth's visit. Sepple's behavioral history included a consistent pattern of manipulation and control. Ex-partners and family members described him as domineering, jealous, and quick to anger. He frequently used emotional blackmail and isolation to limit his partner's connections with the outside world. These behavioral red flags were either dismissed or overlooked by the authorities. His tendency to escalate from verbal control to physical threats was already evident in his past relationships. Reports indicate that although Sepple had not been convicted of any crimes prior to Ashley's murder, the lack of criminal prosecution was not due to a clean record, but rather the systemic failure to pursue legal consequences. This absence of official convictions created a misleading profile of someone with no criminal background, despite significant prior documentation of abusive conduct. This raises a larger question. Should online dating platforms or social media services warn users when their potential matches have restraining orders against them? In cases like Jack Sepple's, where past behavior is documented through civil protections but not criminal convictions, the current system allows abusers to maintain an undetected online presence. According to friends and witnesses, Sepple's behavior began to shift rapidly. He became increasingly possessive and controlling. He monitored Ashley's movements, tracked her phone, and limited her ability to contact friends and family. Her social media activity decreased. Friends back in Canada noticed that communication with Ashley became irregular and stilted, often delayed or completely cut off. Sepple allegedly began dictating who she could speak to and when. Reports from those who interacted with Ashley during this time suggest that she was no longer acting like herself. She appeared withdrawn in conversations and rarely spoke openly. At least one friend in the UK saw visible bruises on her arms and legs, though Ashley dismissed them when questioned. These injuries were consistent with later autopsy findings, which documented repeated physical trauma. Despite this, no formal report was made, and Ashley remained inside the flat with Sepple. On February 1st, 2022, Ashley sent a series of disturbing text messages to friends. She wrote, "I need help," and "I want to leave." These messages suggest that she had made a decision to escape the relationship. The texts were direct and indicated urgency. However, just a short time later, Ashley followed up with additional messages that seemed to downplay the situation, telling friends that everything was fine and there was no need to worry. Some of her friends now believe these later messages were sent under duress. It is speculated that Sepple may have forced her to write them or dictated what she should say. The sudden shift in tone, from desperation to calm reassurance, raises concerns about coercion. The timing of these texts, minutes apart, suggests outside influence. The circumstances leading to Ashley's murder were marked by clear and progressive warning signs, from possessive behavior, communication control, physical injury, and emotional isolation, to the urgent pleas for help sent just hours before her death. If a friend sends a message saying, "I need help," and then later says they're fine, what is the appropriate response? In Ashley's case, her friends followed up in person and involved law enforcement. It was already too late. However, the decision to act likely prevented Sepple from fleeing or further interfering with evidence. Should individuals with multiple restraining orders be banned from dating platforms? Is a restraining order enough to protect someone if it doesn't lead to criminal consequences? When someone signals distress and then walks it back, what is your responsibility as a friend? On February 1st, 2022, Essex police responded to a 999 emergency call made by concerned friends of 19-year-old Canadian national Ashley Wadsworth. The call directed them to a residential flat in Tennyson Road, Chelmsford, England. These friends had not been able to reach Ashley and were alarmed by earlier text messages where she had expressed fear and a desire to leave her boyfriend, Jack Sepple. When police arrived at the flat around 4 p.m., they were met with silence at the door. Entry was forced, and what officers discovered inside marked the beginning of a gruesome murder investigation. Ashley Wadsworth was found lifeless on the bedroom floor. Her body displayed signs of extreme violence. She had been stabbed 90 times. The injuries were concentrated on her heart, lungs, liver, and stomach. Bruises were clearly visible on her face, neck, arms, and legs, indicating a prolonged and violent struggle. The scene suggested not only a homicidal act, but one carried out with rage and control. Next to Ashley's mutilated body was her boyfriend, Jack Sepple, then 23 years old. He was lying on the bed, unbothered, exhibiting no visible distress. According to responding officers, his demeanor was calm and detached. Soon after, officers discovered Sepple had recorded a confession video on his phone, stating directly what he had done. In the footage, he explicitly admits to stabbing Ashley and shows no remorse. Additionally, evidence revealed that Sepple had video called his sister while Ashley's dead body was still in the room. During the call, he allegedly showed her the body, casually referencing the murder without hesitation. This behavior added a disturbing psychological layer to the case. Not only did Sepple murder Ashley, he also documented it, acknowledged it, and shared it. His lack of remorse, immediate confession, and willingness to display the act suggested a detached or possibly narcissistic disposition. The lack of panic at the crime scene and his calm presentation made the incident even more difficult to process. The police arrested Sepple on the scene without resistance. He was taken into custody and charged with Ashley Wadsworth's murder. What goes through someone's mind as they film themselves next to a body they just mutilated? Following Sepple's arrest, Essex police began a formal investigation. His mobile phone was seized, and forensic technicians extracted confession video, which became a central piece of evidence. The digital footprint also included search history, message logs, and details of Ashley's final hours. The autopsy results corroborated the brutality described at the crime scene. Ashley sustained 90 stab wounds, a number that far exceeds what would be required to cause death, indicating a violent and excessive attack. The forensic report listed the damage to her heart, lungs, stomach, and liver, and documented visible defensive wounds on her limbs, along with bruising that suggested she had been beaten before the stabbing occurred. This pattern of violence painted a clear picture of physical domination and control. The timeline of the attack was pieced together from digital evidence and witness accounts. Hours before her death, Ashley had sent distressed messages to friends, stating that she needed help and wanted to leave Seppel. In one message, she allegedly stated, "I need help." Later texts, likely sent under duress, claimed everything was fine, creating a window of suspicion. Friends who received those mixed signals decided to check on her. Their concern triggered the welfare check that led police to the murder scene. Testimonies from Ashley's friends added critical context. They revealed escalating concerns over the weeks following her arrival in the UK. Friends noticed changes in her behavior, reduced contact, limited social media activity, and indications she was being controlled. Multiple people noted that Ashley appeared tense and fearful in the final days. The messages sent on the day of her murder confirmed her intent to escape the relationship. The investigation also opened the door to Jack Seppel's history, a background full of red flags. Seppel had a documented pattern of abuse. Police uncovered that two of his previous ex-girlfriends had filed restraining orders against him. In a disturbing turn, his own mother had also filed a restraining order after suffering threatening behavior. Yet, none of these incidents led to a criminal conviction. He remained free, unrestricted, and unmonitored. No systemic tracking existed to flag Seppel as a threat when Ashley applied for a travel visa or entered the country. Essex police acknowledged a failure. Following the murder, the department implemented new policies to track domestic abuse suspects with histories of controlling or coercive behavior, even if they hadn't been formally convicted. The new system classifies high-risk individuals and monitors red flag behaviors, such as stalking, emotional manipulation, and digital surveillance. The confession video, combined with digital messages and forensic evidence, made the case against Seppel airtight. No trial was required. What systems should be in place to flag abusers before tragedies occur? This case exposes critical issues: the dark side of online relationships, the lack of systems to detect violent histories in romantic partners, and the ease with which digital control can mask physical abuse. Ashley Wadsworth's story is a warning about trust, about isolation, and about the cost of ignoring red flags. How many signs were missed in this case? How many more like Ashley are out there right now, afraid to speak? And what should justice truly look like when someone documents their own brutality without remorse? The trial of Jack Seppel took place at Chelmsford Crown Court, the venue for this high-profile murder case. Seppel entered a guilty plea to the charge of murder. Due to his admission and the overwhelming evidence against him, the prosecution and defense agreed that a full trial was unnecessary. This plea eliminated the need for witnesses to testify and for the court to hear lengthy arguments regarding his guilt. The facts of the case, including the brutal nature of the attack and the timeline leading to Ashley Wadsworth's death, were accepted by both sides. The sentencing hearing was then scheduled. The judge presiding over the case delivered a formal sentence of life imprisonment for Jack Seppel, with a minimum term of 23 years and 6 months before he would be eligible for parole consideration. This means that Seppel must serve nearly a quarter-century behind bars, reflecting the serious nature of his crime and the degree of violence involved. During sentencing, the judge described the murder as a ferocious, sustained attack with no justification. This statement highlighted the particularly vicious nature of the assault. Seppel inflicted 90 stab wounds on Ashley, targeting vital organs such as the heart, lungs, liver, and stomach. In addition to the stab wounds, she sustained extensive bruising on her face, neck, arms, and legs, indicating a prolonged and violent struggle. The judge's remarks underscored that the attack was neither impulsive nor accidental, but deliberately brutal and sustained over a period. Further details about Seppel's past were presented in court. It emerged that he had a documented history of violent behavior. Prior to this murder, Seppo had been subject to at least 2 restraining orders imposed by former partners and 1 from his mother. These restraining orders were designed to limit his contact with individuals who accuse him of abuse or threatening behavior. Despite these legal restrictions and warnings, Seppo was able to enter a relationship with Ashley and live with her, indicating systemic failures in tracking and enforcement of these protections. The court also heard victim impact statements from Ashley's family. These statements detail the emotional and practical consequences of Ashley's death on her loved ones, the loss of potential, and the ripple effects of violent crime on families. While these statements often contain emotional content, the court treats them as part of the formal sentencing process to contextualize the impact beyond the legal facts. Is a minimum term of 23 years sufficient punishment for a murder involving such extreme violence and premeditation? In response to murder and the systemic shortcomings revealed during the investigation, Essex police initiated several new measures aimed at preventing similar tragedies. The force launched a specialized domestic abuse detection program designed to identify high-risk individuals through behavioral patterns rather than solely physical evidence. This program focuses on recognizing non-physical forms of abuse, including coercive control, stalking, and manipulation, factors that often precede physical violence but may not result in immediate legal action. The goal is to intervene earlier, preventing escalation to fatal outcomes. The Ashley Wadsworth case also sparked wider national discussions within the United Kingdom about the importance of recognizing red flag behaviors in domestic relationships. There was particular emphasis on the dangers of coercive control, which can isolate victims and limit their access to support, as appeared to be the case with Ashley. Advocacy groups used the case to highlight the risks faced by women involved in online and long-distance relationships, especially when one partner travels abroad. These groups push for better protections and education around the warning signs of abuse, encouraging law enforcement agencies and policymakers to adapt to realities of modern relationship dynamics. Ashley's family took steps to raise awareness by establishing campaigns and initiatives in her name. These campaigns focus on educating young people about healthy relationships and encouraging vigilance against signs of abuse, particularly in situations involving international travel or long-distance romance. One proposed area of reform involves immigration and travel policy. Discussions have emerged about whether travel visas should include background checks on the host partner's history with domestic violence or restraining orders. Such measures aim to prevent vulnerable individuals from being placed in dangerous environments unknowingly. Should travel visas include mandatory checks on the domestic violence history of the host partner to protect international visitors? A review of the timeline in this case reveals how Ashley Wadsworth's hopeful journey ended in tragedy within a span of few months after arriving in the UK. Ashley traveled to meet Jack Seppo with expectations of a positive relationship and new experiences. However, multiple warning signs and clear indications of risk were overlooked. Despite the existence of prior restraining orders against Seppo, there was insufficient enforcement or information sharing between agencies. This allowed him to maintain contact with Ashley and live with her. Ashley's final messages to friends, signaling distress and a need for help, were early cries for intervention that were not fully acted upon in time. The case underscores the critical importance of recognizing early behavioral red flags in relationships. Coercive control, isolation, and escalating violence often precede physical assault. Systems that fail to identify and act on these warning signs leave victims vulnerable. From a legal and social standpoint, the Ashley Wadsworth case demonstrates gaps in both prevention and protection frameworks. Law enforcement agencies and social services may have missed opportunities to intervene before the relationship reached its fatal outcome. The need for improved coordination, better tracking of high-risk offenders, and expanded definitions of abuse are key lessons from this case. Do you think Ashley's murder could have been prevented with stronger intervention? How should society manage individuals with multiple restraining orders to reduce the risk of repeat violence? If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, Stay safe and stay aware.